Hello and welcome to Reportage. This is Danish bin Nabi. In today's segment of Reportage, I am joined by Vanya Vaidehi Bhargav to talk about his recently released book, Being Hindu, Being Indian, which is published by Penguin Random House. The book talks about Lala Lajpat Rai, his life and his politics. Let's listen into the author. So, Vanya, for the viewers, explain it for the viewers how Lala Lajpat Rai's politics was different than Veer Savarkar's. Let me rephrase my question. How did he basically view nationalism differently than Veer Savarkar, which you have tried to answer in your book?
Yeah, so firstly, when we talk about Lajpat Rai, is English is fine or Hindi?
Anything is fine.
English is fine.
Yeah, anything is fine. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead. Can you hear me?
Hi, it's I think some
It's
connection
fine.
problem.
It's fine. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to also ask English or Hindi?
English is fine. Go ahead.
English. Okay, fine. So, yeah, so firstly, when we talk about Lajpat Rai's nationalism, you always have to talk in phases because his thought evolved a lot over a 40-year period from the 1880s to 1928 when he died. So the one speech which is really used and has been interpreted by historians as laying the ground for Savarkar's Hindutva ideology that was elaborated in 1923 in the tract Hindutva, Who is a Hindu, also known as Essentials of Hindutva. So the speech of Lajpat Rai, which is used as a speech he gives in the second phase of his intellectual life. So this was a speech he gave in 1909 to the Punjab Hindu Sabha, in which he basically articulates a very strong idea of the Hindu nation and says that within this nation, we can have also Sikhs, Buddhists, and Jains because they may follow a different religion, but they are part of the Hindu nation because they subscribe to Hindu culture. So he made Hindu culture the core of his idea of the Hindu nation, which sounds very similar to Savarkar, who also considered Sikhs, Buddhists, and Jains part of the Hindutva nation. And also you see similarity also in how he imagines his history, Lajpat Rai. So in 1901 also, he articulates this idea that the Hindu nation was crystallized in resistance to the foreign Muslim enemy. And he sees Hindus and Muslims as separate religious nationalities with separate religions and cultures. So sounds similar to Savarkar. This is why people have conflated the two. But what I argue is that while these were similarities and it appears that they were very similar, there are also distinctions and differences. What is the difference? The difference is that Savarkar, in his Hindutva tract, basically argues that Hindu culture is the core of the only nation in India is a Hindu nation, and the core of this nation is Hindu culture, Hindu Sanskriti. And Muslims and Christians, if they want to be part of this Hindu nation of India, they have to renounce their religions and their cultures, which he sees as foreign, even though, of course, Islam and Christianity have had a very long standing history in the Indian subcontinent, but he saw them as foreigner tied to foreign lands. And his demand from religious minorities like Muslims and Christians is that they assimilate and completely into Hindu culture. That's the only way they will be part of the nation of India. And unless they do that, they will be considered second-class citizens. And he kind of binds the land of India to Hindu culture in this very strong way. So, like he has this slogan, Hindustan Hinduon ka, which Lajpat Rai does not have. Lajpat Rai is someone who has this idea of a separate Hindu and Muslim nation, but he considers space for both cultures and all cultures here within this land, rather than tying Hindu culture to India in this way or demanding assimilation from religious minorities. And for him, equal citizenship is a very foundational thing. It's nothing to do with religion, citizenship.
So this is the period of 1910 to 1920, 1925. This is the time frame we are talking about, right?
So the Lajpat Rai's most robust idea of Hindu nationalism, on the basis of which he's considered an ancestor of Hindutva, this was a speech in 1909 and is seen to lay the ground for Hindutva ideology, which is articulated in the tract by Savarkar in 1923. Then, in the fourth phase of Lajpat Rai's political intellectual life, he does join the Hindu Mahasabha, and the Hindu Mahasabha is going towards the Hindutva ideology in this period. And Lajpat Rai is also articulating the idea of a Hindu politics. This is also why he's kind of seen as someone who is similar to Savarkar. But here also I'm arguing that he's actually articulating he's imagining a future secular state where religion and the state are seen as should be kept very separate. And again, equal citizenship is something he imagines for the future Indian nation, religious freedom for everyone, and no demand for assimilation and linkage of India to one culture, one Hindu culture. He
If
doesn't
I
have this idea.
if I am correct, you have also mentioned in your book that they have only met once. That was, I think, in late 1920s, Savarkar and Lala
Yeah,
Lajpat
as
Rai. Am
far
I
as
right?
I know, yeah. As far as I know, and this is according to his biographer Feroz Chand, there was one meeting in the 20s. And after that, not really that much interaction. Although, of course, both were very aware of each other's politics and
So
presence.
they were in the book. You are arguing basically that both of them are poles apart in their ideas and in their vision of India. So, but why is it the present neo-Hindutva people, they think or they make people believe that Lala Lajpat Rai was one amongst them?
I think because what I'm arguing is not exactly that they're poles apart, but there are certain similarities. And on the basis of that, I think historians, as well as the Hindu right politicians, have seen these similarities and only seen these and then conflated the two. But there are also significant differences. If you look at both both the individuals' thought and their writings, there are very significant differences which also have meaning. So, I mean, politicians will claim historical figures for their own political purposes, but as historians we have to go, and also as conscious citizens we have to go and see where they are similar and where they are also different. And one place where they're very different is this. For instance, Lajpat Rai has a very explicit declaration against the idea of Hindu Raj. That anyone, he says to the Hindus, any Hindus who dream of a Hindu Raj in this country and who seek to crush the Muslims are insane, and this insanity will ruin their Hinduism along with their country. Or he has these statements where he's talking about one religion, one tongue, as this very medieval idea. It's a tyrannical idea. This idea of homogeneity or uniformity is something he's not articulating or championing.
So, in your view, tell about tell to the viewers, how did Lala Lajpat Rai basically viewed the Muslim emperors of the Indian subcontinent, 14th, 13th, and 15th centuries?
Yeah, so in the first two phases of his life, he is kind of articulating some ideas which sound again similar to Savarkar. So there is an idea that the Hindu nation was formed. This is in the second phase, where from 1900 to 1915. That's the second phase of his political and intellectual life. So he's articulating this idea that the Hindu nation was formed in resistance to foreign rule. But again, different from Savarkar, because here the antagonism is not कि वो चले ही जा रहा है. There's like incessant warfare, or there's not those ideas that the main aim of Muslim rule is to really humiliate Hindus or to eradicate Hinduism, or those kind of very strong ideas are not there. But yes, there is some sense of antagonism that is there in his perception of how India's history, which is of course a nationalist politician's perception. This is very different from what historians would say. But in the third phase of his life, so this is beginning from 1915, he starts to reinterpret the period of Muslim rule. So the medieval period of India's history, he is going back and reinterpreting this period and saying that, earlier the Muslim rulers who had come were, of course, foreign initially, but then they became sons of soil because they adopted India as their home. They married here. They had their children here. They established their lives here. They were Indians by birth, marriage, and by death. And they also ruled here with a lot of impartiality. There was not political discrimination or social discrimination. Like he compared it to British rulers and said that this kind of social arrogance and social exclusivity that British rulers practice today, this was not there at all in the medieval period of these Muslim rulers. And Hindus were given the highest political offices. And also he says that even Aurangzeb, there was no such conspiracy to
I
outcast or
was coming to
overpower.
the Aurangzeb question. I'm
Yes.
glad that you picked it up.
Yeah.
Oh, his views on Aurangzeb.
Yeah, so he says this that there is no authentic record of Aurangzeb ordering any general massacre of Hindus, and this is also British propaganda. This was part of a British narrative of Indian history where Muslim rule was portrayed in a particular way as violent, oppressive, tyrannical, so that the British could also justify their own more enlightened rule over Hindus. That earlier you have suffered, now we will come and rule you and show you what better benevolent rule is.
Basically, the British
And
were doing that divide and rule.
yeah, so and this infused the colonial education system, these narratives of history and all the history that educated people were consuming were written by colonial, historians or colonial scholar officials, jo kehte hain. And he says that this is part of these narratives, and there's no authentic record of there being any conspiracy to outcast Hinduism in this way.
Before Jinnah came on the national scene, we see the Sir Said Ahmad Khan from the Muslim side, who was trying to woo the Muslims. So, talk a bit. You have also talked earlier in the first few chapters between relationship between Lala Lajpat Rai and Sir Said Ahmad Khan. What was
Yeah.
how this relationship basically? What was this relationship about?
So initially, it was one of admiration from a very young Lajpat Rai. This is a 20-year-old Lajpat Rai whose father was also an admirer of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, that
Absolutely.
school of Islam, Muslim modernism. But then, when Sir Syed Ahmad Khan opposes the Congress and its demand for elective representation, Lajpat Rai is very shocked and writes these four open letters in 1888 to Syed Ahmad Khan, and basically challenges this kind of opposition that he takes. So the debate is one-sided because this is a 23-year-old Lajpat Rai writing to a 79-year-old Muslim aristocrat official. There's, as far as I know, no replies or response from the other side, but the debate is basically a person who belongs to some sort of an older world, an aristocratic world, where basically the idea is that Indians, Hindustani, should be given representation. But the idea is that these are Rais log. Raises will be nominated by the British. They know how to naturally rule over the people. They know what is good for them. And they should be nominated by the British to become part of the system of rule over the ordinary Indians. And the rule will be of Muslim aristocrats who know the art of rule, and also with Hindu Raja Rajputs. ये जो new logic आ रहा है of democracy, of one man one vote. Although right now the universal franchise is not happening right now in 1888 when this debate is happening, but the idea of elective representation, that the people should vote. This idea to Sir Syed is very newfangled and odd. Okay, numbers should not play a role over here. It's about the art of rule and people with the particular social status, like Raja Rajputs and Muslim races, they know the art of rule. So there's this one aristocratic logic, and ये दूसरा भी एक logic है कि इंडिया एक कॉम है, लेकिन यहाँ पे बहुत सारे और ग्रुप्स हैं. There are a lot of other social cleavages, there is inequality, and Muslims are falling behind in wealth, in education, in jobs. In the Hindi-Urdu controversy, also Hindi is winning out, Urdu is losing out. So Muslims are on the losing side of this story now. So if you expand the pool from which representatives are drawn from races to a larger body of people, then Muslims will rule out. Plus, there is this, if you bring in the number logic, Muslims are in a minority and they will lose out in this whole, new logic of nationalism and democracy. For Lajpat Rai, of course, it's easier. He's part of the Hindu middle class and he's part of the Hindu majority also. So the language of democracy and Indian nationalism is easier for him to adopt.
And in the subsequent chapters, you also talk about Khilafat movement. Lala Lajpat Rai also took a stand on Khilafat movement. For the viewers, explain it for the viewers. What was his views about Khilafat movement?
Yeah, so his view was that basically this was a movement to preserve the Ottoman Caliphate Empire, which was under threat now because during the First World War, if the Britain and France won, they would break up the Ottoman Empire. And also the concern was to keep Islam's holy places under the Ottoman Caliph's custody. So the Ottoman Caliph by now is seen by Muslims globally as a spiritual head of Islam, जैसे आज Pope हैं for Catholic Christians. So this was a movement to kind of save Islam, which was considered under threat, or the Caliph, which was an institution, Islamic institution, which was considered under threat from European imperial powers. So there was this movement that was started by Gandhi and a section of India's Muslim leadership. And Lajpat Rai by now has started to believe that Hindus and Muslims and their unity is very foundational to the idea of Indian Swaraj, to the idea of Indian self-government. And it also should be a matter of the first article of their political faith, he says. So a moral and political principle for its own right. So not just to win freedom, but this is like a foundation for India's identity also as a nation. And considering this, he then says that because this is what you should believe in, Hindu-Muslim unity is essential for our autonomy and identity. Hindus should support the Muslim cause of the caliphate as their brothers. They should identify with this cause, even if it's a cause only, confined to Muslims. They should empathize with Muslims and support their cause. And also because they're Muslims and Hindus are co-nationals, fellow nationals. Anything that pains Muslims is also an offense to Hindus. And also he had begun to also see the Ottoman Caliphate Empire as a bulwark against further European expansion into India and Asia. So it was kind of seen as an ally. The Ottoman Caliphate and the Muslim world was seen as India's ally. So it was a very similar logic to Gandhi's. Balance of interest, internationalist argument also, and also for India's autonomy and independence and freedom.
Two important leaders which I would like you to talk about: Lala Lajpat Rai's relationship with Muhammad Ali Jinnah and his relationship with Bhagat Singh. Let's start with Bhagat Singh first, because he was very close to Bhagat Singh. Let's start with Bhagat Singh first.
Yeah, so firstly, he had participated in a rural agrarian movement in 1907. This is part of the Swadeshi agitation with Bhagat Singh's uncle. So this is part of this history between Bhagat Singh and Lajpat Rai. And both Bhagat Singh's uncle and Lajpat Rai were deported together to Burma after this. But more importantly than this, directly between him and Bhagat Singh, there is the connection of this, Arya Samaji background and association. Bhagat Singh was also part of the DAV college system, education system, and he was inspired by, one historian has also said that he was inspired into radical anti-colonial nationalism by Lajpat Rai's library, and he was also studied in the National College founded by Lajpat Rai. So a foundational influence on Bhagat Singh, but also by the 20s, Bhagat Singh is actually now opposing Lajpat Rai, the kind of politics that Lajpat Rai is turning towards. So there's Hindu Mahasabha politics, which Bhagat Singh really does not agree with this. At the same time, Bhagat Singh is organizing inter-community dinners between Sikhs, Muslims, and Hindus as part of the Naujawan Sabha. And Lajpat Rai is doing Hindu Sangathan, organizing, this political consolidation of Hindus. So apparently Bhagat Singh distributes this pamphlet called The Lost Leader. And this is against Lajpat Rai, he sees as a lost leader who is lost to this Hindu communal kind of politics. But at the same time, when Lajpat Rai is injured fatally in the Lathi charge, which eventually takes his life in 1928, Bhagat Singh avenges his death. So this symbol of, Punjab Kesari and like this radical anti-colonial figure, that is also what, despite his disagreement with Lajpat Rai's Hindu politics, Hindu communal politics, he avenges his death. So that's with the Bhagat Singh and Lajpat Rai.
And with Muhammad Ali Jinnah.
So the Jinnah is in the 1920s is when Lajpat Rai really starts to engage with Jinnah, and he's troubled by the fact that Jinnah has left the Congress and is not coming back. And Jinnah at this point is assuming the role of a broker between the Congress and between several other provincial Muslim leaders who have come up after 1919 के जो reforms थे, Montagu Chelmsford reforms. After this, a lot of other Muslim politicians have come up in Bengal and Punjab, and Jinnah is brokering this. But he's also a very powerless kind of a figure. He has no mass base. In the 1920s, he's a Bombay politician. He used to be a elite constitutionalist. Earlier, he could negotiate very directly with Malviya or with Tilak, jaise in the 1916 Lucknow Pact, he did that. Now he's contending with all these other figures who have come up. And Lajpat Rai is just uncomfortable with the fact that Jinnah is now concerned about what is a common united Muslim demand, that to safeguard their position once the British leave, what will be the seats that will be, in a sense, be given to the Muslim community. And Lajpat Rai sees this as, separatist politics, although the Muslim League saw this as safeguarding, the Muslim community in a future where there will be a Hindu majority, possibly ruling over a Muslim minority. So they are seeing this as safeguarding, the Muslim community. Lajpat Rai sees this as kind of excessive separatism. But at the end, he kind of 1927, he's also considering Jinnah's new proposals, where he gives up separate electorates and proposes certain other things. And is part of this, it's a federal India where Muslim provinces will have their own autonomy, and also guaranteed representation for Muslim majorities in Punjab and Bengal, and also 1/3 seats for Muslims at the center. So, and he kind of, by 1928 also, Lajpat Rai is seeing Jinnah as a communalist, but also a nationalist. So someone who is both. He's safeguarding his community interest, but is also a nationalist.
So we have been recording this interview since over 20 minutes now. And we cannot entirely sum up this over 450-page book in this short interview. So I must pose you my last question before we wind up this one. What was his stand on caste system in India?
So again, with Lajpat Rai, there's a lot of evolution always. So in his most radical stance on caste is from 1909 to 1915, this period. He's very radical on caste. Even when he's articulating ideas of a Hindu community or a Hindu national unity, he uses both terms. Very radical on caste, and talks about granting the sacred thread to all Hindus, including lower castes and Dalits, as a very the most stark symbol of respect that can be given. And also the importance of educating lower castes and Dalits, because he thinks that this is the only way to empower them to challenge upper caste prejudice and arrogance and cruelty. And he likens upper castes to slave owners, and is very, very strong in his language, and asks pandits to excommunicate him when he's kind of reclaiming, as he says, he's doing shuddhi of certain domes in UP, and he challenges the pandits to excommunicate him. And he also talks about how these taboos on caste, intercaste dining, intercaste marriage, intercaste living pe jo taboos hain, these are all an invention of modern times. In the ancient times, this was not there in ancient Hinduism.
So he was against the caste system of India.
He was against the caste system, but in the 1920s, we see that sometimes he can also become conservative on the caste question, because
so basically he did not take any stand on any particular issue, because sometimes he's on the one side and on the other time we see he's on the other side of the spectrum of the things.
I think he's a contextual figure, and he's a complicated figure, and he's someone who is responding. Yeah, he's responding to context, but I think his personal belief was quite radical on caste. But for strategic purposes, he could also withdraw from that radicalism.
And
because
he has the same stand on India, Muslim Hindu question. Sometimes he is there, sometimes he's on the other side.
Yes. So, but he, yeah. So sometimes, but he's never articulating.
This is what a reader gets when he reads your book. This is what a reader feels, how to solve this enigma, where basically he stands on any particular issue.
But there are certain, you're right that he's fluid, and there's a lot of change and context. There's also internal tension, but then there's also some coherence. So nowhere will you see him going towards Gadarite politics, armed rebellion.
But then we can also say politics in 1910 and 1920 was such that he had to change his stance from one point to the other. We can say that.
That is also a fact. It was a period of flux also, when empires are breaking down, the nation is becoming stronger,
and many things are happening. Plus, you have Hindu-Muslim tensions going on.
Yeah, but there were some people like Gandhi never changed his stance on the question of national, whether Hindus and Muslims are one nation. Gandhi, someone like Gandhi or Nehru didn't change their stance.
Even
Lajpat
Savarkar
Rai,
did not change his stance.
well, some people say that Savarkar in 1907 was, more towards at least, having this idea that Hindus and Muslims fought together in the 1857 revolt. So some people view him as more of an Indian nationalist earlier, and then he became Hindutva. But one thing I just want to reiterate this, that despite all the fluidity, Lajpat Rai never goes over to that side where there's one nation in India, that's the Hindu nation. India's culture is only Hindu culture, and he has some very deep problem with diversity, such that people have to give up their religious and cultural difference to adopt a single culture. And this strong statement against Hindu Raj, I think,
So,
has some
so
meaning.
yeah. So let's end up this discussion on this very particular note, and let me hold your book once more for the readers, for the viewers, so it reach more people, and I hope they buy and read your book. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Danish.
Please subscribe to our channel Reportage and press the bell icon to remain updated.